Okay, so today we are up to the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 5 season finale, the Cutie ReMark. An oddly named title, considering that there was very little Cutie marking going on. We start off with Twilight practicing her speech. And then after the credits, we go into Twilight giving her speech. I think the speech practicing part could have been cut to have made room for more fascinating time travel shenanigans later on in the episode. But the part where Twilight's giving her speech was interesting. We had a lot of nice background unicorns in the students' seating area during the speech, including a return appearance from Moondancer, who seems to be getting along with others. We also get to see Minuet and Lyra, and then there is, of course, Starlight Glimmer sitting briefly in the audience, just long enough to tip off Twilight that she's returned into the episode. And then, after giving her speech, Twilight comes home to the castle only to find that Starlight Glimmer was able to gain entrance, partially because the place hasn't had any royal guards assigned to it. Found see Flash Sentry and an assortment of other royal guards hang around Twilight's castle next season. I'll be a little bit puzzled as to why she allowed them to not guard the castle, especially after Starlight Glimmer entering the castle the way she did. That should be a tip-off that you need to improve your security. Although, considering that Starlight Glimmer is as powerful or more powerful than Twilight Sparkle, adding extra guards would have done very little to have slowed her down. Starlight Glimmer taunts Twilight for a little bit before casting a magic spell that allows her to travel through time. And when Spike grabs the spell against Twilight's wishes, he kicks off the plot and sends Twilight faithfully back in time to witness what Starlight Glimmer is about to attempt. She's gone back to the day that Rainbow did the Sonic Rainboom, and she's going to stop it, and we're going to see a series of events unfold, showing all sorts of different futures that could have happened if the Sonic Rainboom had never been pulled off and Twilight's friends had never come into existence. This also makes me think of another question, that one being why separate all of these alternate timelines into multiple alternate timelines rather than one large alternate timeline where all of these things that we see happened at different points in one timeline. But getting back onto track, Twilight goes back through time to try and stop Starlight Glimmer. Starlight is always one step ahead of Twilight and has something prepared to counter Twilight's efforts. In each encounter, she is outpowering and outsmarting Twilight, and Twilight keeps messing up the timeline, or allowing the timeline to be messed up, or in other ways failing to stop the timeline from being saved. She keeps going back into time, seeing one disastrous world after another. These alternate timelines include a World War II 1940s style alternate timeline where Equestria is at war with the Crystal Empire, a back to nature tribal Sherwood Forest style Equestria where the ponies are living in the woods and hiding from the changelings in a battle that's doomed to failure. An eternal night world where the ponies are surprisingly living rather quite well despite the fact that it's eternal night, and life has adapted to find a way to survive without sunlight. Ponies seem to be in decent condition, just under the rule of Nightmare Moon and her power-hungry ways. Then we get a speed montage of 3 other alternate worlds: T-Rex, Discord, and the Flim Flam brothers. And then a final world where there's just barren nothingness and everything's depressing. Twilight keeps coming back after each one, and Starlight Glimmer keeps countering Twilight's efforts. Eventually, Twilight gets Starlight to show her own origin story, and we learn that Starlight Glimmer doesn't like Cutie ReMarks because she lost one of her friends when her friend got his Cutie ReMark, and his parents sent him out of town to Canterlot to study magic, and she never saw him again, and then she was lonely because of that. This is a very ridiculous reason for turning evil, however. Friends move out of friends' lives all the time, and when this happens, you either make arrangements to visit them occasionally, or you start writing them letters. And if they don't keep in touch with you and don't put forth the effort to read and respond to your mail, or take the trip out of town to visit you every so often, every few months, then they're not really friends worth keeping, and you can very easily make new friends. Maybe not very easily, but certainly more easy than turning evil. This is Starlight's reason for being against Cutie ReMarks, as she blames Cutie ReMarks for taking away friendships. Whether this makes sense or not, we're going to overlook that and continue on with the story. Twilight realizes that she can't overpower Starlight and she can't outsmart her, with Starlight holding the scroll the spell is written on and threatening to rip it up, preventing Twilight from traveling through time after it's been ripped. In an act that would break the time loop in Starlight's favor, Twilight decides that the only course of action she has left is talking and speechifying and trying to convince Starlight Glimmer out of doing her evil. She eventually touches Starlight's emotions and gets her to rationalize that she should give up being evil, and thus she is reformed. The ponies return to the present day, the preserved timeline where everything is unaltered, and through a montage, Starlight Glimmer becomes friends with the main six, as well as becoming friends with the villagers that she left behind in the season premiere. And we end the episode on a group shot of everybody's favorite background ponies all gathered around for one big group hug. Overall, this was an exciting season finale, very epic, very fascinating stuff happened, but they could have cut a few things out to have given us more time expanding on some of the interesting things that were glazed over, and it could have added more interest to the episode also. Here are some other observations I made of the episode. A lot of alternate timelines could have been added to the episode, made longer, or perhaps combined 2 or 3 into one timeline as to save on the number of timelines that Twilight had to visit. By cutting out things like her practicing the speech in the pre-credits sequence, or cutting out some of the exposition stuff that we didn't need, we could have thrown in 2 or 3 more alternate realities. Or we could have lengthened the amount of time that we spend in each alternate reality, allowing us to further enjoy some of the worlds that we didn't get to spend a whole lot of time in. Although it's perfectly understandable that Twilight wouldn't want to spend even so much as 10 seconds in a T-Rex world where she could have had her magic drained from her. She could have spent a little extra time in the Discord or Flim Flam Brother world, and maybe even added on worlds for some of the other My Little Pony villains. When I really think about it, villains like Trixie and Sunset Shimmer, and the Parasprites, and Rarity with the Inspiration Manifestation, and 50-foot tall, super greedy, full-grown Dragon Spike, are all challenges that came into existence because of Twilight's meddling. The same can be said for Sunset Shimmer and the Sirens. Even though they both existed before Twilight, they came into their increased power status because of Twilight's existence. So all of those villains, if Twilight never existed, those villains would have also probably not exist. Though I do feel that it would have been interesting to have shown where Sunset Shimmer or Trixie or any of those others could have been without Twilight's influence in their lives. What alternate paths could they have taken in some of these alternate timelines? It would have also been nice to have included Dilda and the other Griffins. Maybe showed what would happen if Griffinstone had never lost their idol. Or what would have happened if Dilda had remained friends with Rainbow Dash and never encountered Pinkie or Fluttershy. Starlight Glimmer never gets to see the results of her time-traveling efforts. She never once experiences any of the interesting worlds that Twilight and Spike are traveling to. It could have been interesting to have seen what would happen if Starlight Glimmer had gone into an alternate timeline and through her knowledge of the previous history had used her magic skills and her knowledge of history to stop Nightmare Moon, defeat Discord, defeat Somber, prevent T-Rex from coming into power, stop Chrysalis from invading Canterlot, and time after time proclaimed herself as the hero of Equestria. Starlight, with 5 other friends who would have only been heroes in the alternate timeline and would otherwise not exist or otherwise be relegated to background status, could have worked together to do all of the world saving that Twilight and her friends had done. But we could have shown that even with her knowledge of history and what moves to make before they happened, Starlight, even with all of her powers, could not have properly defended Equestria against all of its threats, and would still have required help from Twilight and her friends to set the timeline straight again. Silverquill said something very similar to this in his review as well. It would have been interesting to have seen what would happen if Nightmare Moon had been defeated but Luna hadn't been saved, or if Queen Chrysalis had been defeated but it had cost Celestia her life, or any number of sort of half-wins that came at greater costs.